She reached in for her toys, found this instead. Stacks of cash, not hers. Same pink suitcase she carried off the plane. So whose was it? 1 hour earlier. 2 pink suitcases, exactly alike. Michael grabbed one, never checked the tag. 1 second, that's all it took. That evening, 2 men at the door. Nice suits, easy smiles. Our bags got mixed up. Polite, almost too polite, and not leaving. She kept calling. Dad's phone, face down in a meeting, nobody noticing. Mom, scrubbing in for surgery. No answer, right when she needed them. Oil by the door. Soap on the stairs. A housekeeper and a 10-year-old, getting the house ready, and not for company. Ready for what? A housekeeper pulled a little girl close and went still. Whatever was out there, they'd face it together. Just the 2 of them. This family had no idea what was coming. Not yet. Best week of their lives behind them. Sun, no schedules. Nora running ahead the whole way. Now just the trip home. That pink suitcase rolling along beside them. Looked like every other bag at the airport. It wasn't. And the next few hours would change everything. But right now, they were just happy. Tired and happy. Heading home. Carousel 4. Packed. 3 flights at once. Everyone tired, everyone grabbing. The pink suitcase came around and Michael took it. Same brand, same color, same little scuff. Didn't check the tag. Why would he? They'd packed just the one. 1 second, 1 wrong bag. That's all it took. To put a fortune that was never theirs into a little girl's bedroom. And 2 very dangerous men on their trail. At the other end of the belt, 2 men in dark suits weren't there for a vacation. Victor Kane and his brother, Dean. They'd come for 1 bag, pink, easy to spot. Holding a fortune that was never theirs. Money moving for someone you don't keep waiting. Dean grabbed a pink case, didn't check the tag either. That's it. Let's go. They walked out with the wrong one. Their money? Already riding home in the back of a family's car. Home, finally. Elena had dinner waiting. She always did. The smell of it filling the house, everyone around the table, that easy after-trip tiredness. And behind them, by the door, the pink suitcase. Nobody gave it a second look. Just a bag. Just home. For a few more minutes, everything was exactly as it should be. Then both their phones went off. Same minute. Michael's office, an emergency. Lisa's hospital, a patient who couldn't wait. Of all the nights. They hated it. You could see it. Each of them put a hand on her shoulder. We're so sorry, sweetheart. Both leaving at once. But Elena was staying. Nora wouldn't be alone. So it was fine. It was going to be fine. Nora waved them off. Go, I've got it. I'll unpack. You go. 10 years old, and already the responsible one. Elena smiled. We'll do it together. The door closed behind her parents. A quiet house now. Just the 2 of them, a warm dinner, and a suitcase to empty. Nothing to it. She didn't know what she was about to find. Neither did Elena. Nora unzipped the suitcase, expecting her clothes, her little souvenirs, the shells she'd collected all week. That's not what was inside. Money. Stacks and stacks of it, banded and wrapped, filling the whole case. For a second she just stared, not breathing. This wasn't their bag. It couldn't be. Elena. Her voice came out small, then louder. Elena, come here, right now. Something was very, very wrong. And somewhere across the city, 2 men had just figured out the same thing. Across town, the Kane brothers opened their bag too. They expected the money, every last bundle of it. Instead, a little girl's vacation, folded shirts, a handful of seashells, a small stuffed rabbit. Dean went still. Victor's jaw tightened. The money, their money, the money they answered to someone for, was gone. Switched. Sitting in some stranger's house right now. And these were not men who let go of a fortune. They'd find that bag. Whatever it took, it didn't take them long. The tag was still on the bag, a name, an address, printed right there. Victor read it twice, slow. Dean was already starting the car. A nice neighborhood, the kind with long driveways and tall windows. The kind of house that felt safe. These two didn't knock on doors for a living. But tonight, they'd make an exception. The address went into the phone, and the car pulled away from the curb. The doorbell rang. Then a knock, calm, even, patient. Through the door, a voice. "Hi there, sorry to bother you. There was a little mix-up at the airport. We grabbed the wrong bag." Friendly, reasonable, the kind of thing you believe in a heartbeat. Except Nora and Elena weren't opening that door. Not for two men they'd never seen, asking about a suitcase full of money. Whatever this was, it had just arrived on their doorstep. Nora pulled the curtain back, just an inch, just enough. Two men on the porch, dark coats, one older, silver hair, calm as anything. One big broad, the kind of big that fills a doorway. They didn't look like neighbors. They didn't look lost. The older one knocked again, still wearing that easy smile, like he had all the time in the world. And that was the thing that made Nora's stomach drop. Nobody that calm was here by accident. Elena crouched beside her, one hand on Nora's back, the other pressed to her own mouth. "Don't make a sound," she whispered. "Don't move." They watched. The big one stepped off the porch, walked along the front of the house, looked up at the windows, checking, counting. Nora let the curtain fall, slow, careful. Her heart was going so hard she could feel it in her ears. These men weren't leaving. Nora got out her phone, called her dad first. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. "Dad, please pick up. There are men outside. Please." Beep. She hung up, tried again. Same thing. He was in that meeting, phone face down on a table somewhere downtown. No idea. She tried her mom. Straight to voicemail. Lisa was scrubbed in, hours from a phone. Nora lowered the phone, and just for a second, her chin trembled. 2 kids worth of fear in one small face. But she swallowed it. Looked at Elena. Elena looked back, and neither of them said the thing they were both thinking. That no one was coming. Not yet. "Okay," Nora whispered, mostly to herself. "Okay. We're okay." She wasn't sure she believed it. But saying it helped. A little. Outside, the knocking had stopped. Somehow that was worse. Out on the lawn, Dean had the phone to his ear. Whoever was on the other end wasn't happy. You could tell by the way his shoulders went stiff, the way he kept saying, I know, we're handling it." The boss. The one the money belonged to. The one you didn't disappoint. Dean hung up, jaw tight. "He wants it tonight," he told Victor. "All of it." Victor just nodded, calm as ever. And that calm was somehow the worst part. He looked up at the house, the dark windows, the locked door, and he didn't see a home. He saw a problem to solve. "Somebody's in there," he said quietly. "Lights were on a minute ago." And he started checking windows, one by one, testing each latch with 2 fingers. Patient, methodical. Inside, behind a curtain, Nora watched a stranger's hand try her window and held her breath. Across the city, in a glass conference room 40 floors up, Michael was on his feet, mid-sentence, walking a room full of executives through a deal months in the making. He was good at this. Focused, locked in, and down on the table, face down by his notepad. His phone lit up. Then again. Then again. 3 missed calls now. A voicemail he hadn't heard, buzzing quietly against the wood, 2 feet from his hand. He didn't look down. Why would he? She was home, safe, with Elena. He'd be back by 9. He pictured her already asleep, the suitcase unpacked. Everything fine. That's the cruel part of a night like this. The people who'd move heaven and earth for you are sometimes just one room away, one glance away, and they don't know. Michael smiled, made his closing point, and his daughter's call rang out, unanswered, again, and Lisa was in another world entirely. Bright lights, the quiet hum of machines, a patient who needed her hands steady and her full attention. She'd left her phone on the counter by the door, the way she always did when it mattered. Out of sight, out of reach. On the screen, a missed call glowed and faded. Glowed and faded. Her daughter, 3 calls deep, and Lisa never saw a single one. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, helping someone who needed her. There's no fault in it. That's the ache of it, really. 2 good parents, doing exactly the right thing in exactly the wrong hour. And 10 miles away, in a quiet house with the curtains drawn, their little girl was learning something no 10-year-old should have to learn so fast. That sometimes, when it counts the most, the only person who can save you is you. Or almost. Because Elena was still right there beside her. The men weren't knocking anymore. Now they were testing. Victor at the front door, the handle slow, click, click, locked. Dean at the side, sliding a window, rattling the frame, then the next one, then the back. Working their way around the house, patient, methodical, like 2 men who'd done this before. No rush, no worry. Like they already knew how this ended. And every latch they tried, every creak of a window frame, carried straight through the quiet house to the 2 people hiding inside. Elena's hand was shaking. But Nora had gone still. Quiet, thinking. Because somewhere, in all that fear, a plan was forming. If these men were getting in, and they were, then Nora was going to make very sure they regretted it. "Elena," she whispered, "I have an idea. Bring the soap, first the oil." Nora grabbed the big bottle from the kitchen, almost full, and got down low by the front entryway, right where anyone coming in would have to step. She poured it slow, a wide, glossy slick across the tile, catching the lamplight. Careful not to leave a single dry patch. Her hands were steady now. Funny how that works. Give a scared kid a job, a plan, and the fear turns into focus. "It won't stop them," Elena whispered. "It doesn't have to stop them," Nora said. "It just has to slow them down, buy us time." Time for what? Elena didn't ask. Outside, a window rattled harder. Wood starting to give. Nora capped the bottle, set it down quiet, and moved to the next part of the plan. The stairs. They were running out of minutes. But they weren't out yet. While Nora handled the entryway, Elena took the stairs. The liquid soap, the big pump bottle from the bathroom, she squeezed it out across the middle steps, edge to edge, then smeared it thin with her hand so it vanished into the wood. You wouldn't see it coming. Not in the dark, not in a hurry. If they get past the oil, Nora had told her, they'll come up here looking for us, and they'll be moving fast. Elena worked quickly, glancing toward the front of the house with every breath. She was a housekeeper, 50-odd years on this earth, and she'd never once imagined a night like this. But the girl beside her, calm, clear, certain, made it feel almost possible. Like maybe they really could outsmart two grown men. She finished the last step, wiped her hand on her cardigan, looked at Nora. Now what? Nora's eyes went up the stairs. Now we get my watch, and we hide Nora's smartwatch. She'd left it charging on her dresser, and right now, it was the most important thing in the house. She snatched it up, clipped it onto her wrist, and pulled Elena down with her into the safest spot she could think of. The far corner of the upstairs bedroom, tucked behind the bed, pressed low against the wall where the doorway couldn't see them. They went still, real quiet, the kind where you can hear your own heartbeat, and you try to make even your breathing softer. Elena held Nora close, one arm around her shoulders. Nora pressed the watch's little screen, the glow lighting both their faces for a second before she shielded it. A phone she could lose, a landline they couldn't reach in time. But this was strapped to her wrist, and it could do two things: call for help and tell people exactly where she was. Downstairs, the back window finally gave. The window gave. A latch popped, a pane swung in, and just like that, they were inside. The big one came first. Dean stepped into the dark entryway, eyes adjusting, one hand reaching for the wall, and his foot hit the oil. Both feet, actually. They went straight out from under him, fast, hard, and Dean came down with a crash that shook the whole front of the house. A picture frame rattled off the wall. He swore, loud, grabbing at the slick floor and getting nowhere, just sliding around like a man on ice. Victor froze in the doorway behind him. What is that? What did you... It's slick. The whole floor's slick. Up in the closet, Nora and Elena heard the crash, the cursing, the scrambling. And Nora, heart pounding, let herself feel it just for a second. It was working. The plan was actually working. But there were still two of them, and one was already getting up. The oil bought them a few seconds, not much more. Because Dean, furious, slick with cooking oil, dragged himself up off that floor and pointed at the stairs. They're up there. They've got to be up there. And Victor went first. Took the stairs fast, angry, not thinking. And that was the whole problem. Because Nora and Elena hadn't just done the entryway. They'd done the stairs too. Soap. Clear, thin, smeared right into the middle steps where you'd never see it coming. Victor's foot hit step 4, and the world went sideways. His leg flew out, his hands grabbed for the banister and caught nothing, and he came down hard, sliding back a few steps before he stopped himself, half-tangled, swearing loud enough to wake the street. What is wrong with his house? Down at the bottom, Dean froze, staring up, not understanding any of it. The stairs too? They got the stairs too? Up in the closet, behind the coats, Nora pressed her own hand over her mouth. Not to cry, to keep from making a sound. Because every part of this was working. The oil, the soap, two grown men flailing around like they'd forgotten how to walk. And a tiny, scared, brilliant 10-year-old had set all of it up. Elena's arm tightened around her. Both of them dead silent in the dark, and Nora's mind was already moving. The traps weren't the plan. The traps were just to buy time. Time for the real plan. She turned to Elena, and she mouthed 2 words. "The phone. Call the police." Nora breathed it, barely a sound, her lips right at Elena's ear. "Right now. Quiet. Don't let them hear you." Elena's hands were shaking so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. She'd grabbed it on the way up, her own cell, thank God. And now she held it low, shielding the screen with her cardigan so no light would leak under the closet door. Here's the thing about Elena. 50-some years old, a housekeeper, a calm woman who folded laundry and made soup and had never once been part of anything like this. Every nerve in her body was screaming at her to freeze. Stay small. Wait. Hope. But the little girl pressed against her wasn't waiting. The little girl had a plan. And somehow that steadiness, that 10-year-old steadiness, was the only thing keeping Elena from coming apart. Down the hall, the men were up again. She could hear them, feet slipping and catching on the soaped stairs, voices low and mean. "Check the rooms. They're hiding. Find them." Elena's eyes filled. Nora squeezed her hand once, hard. A little signal in the dark. "I'm here. Do it." So Elena found the keypad. 3 numbers. Her thumb hovered for half a second, and then she pressed them. Brought the phone up slow, turned her whole face into the hanging coats to bury the sound. And she waited for the line to connect, her heart slamming, the girl beside her holding her breath. 2 men out in the dark hallway looking for the exact spot where they were hiding. The line connected. A voice, calm even, the kind trained to stay steady when everyone else is falling apart. 911, what's your emergency? Elena could barely get the words out, each one a shaking whisper. There are 2 men in the house. They forced their way in. We're hiding upstairs, in a closet. There's a little girl with me. Please. Please send someone. The dispatcher didn't panic. Started in with the questions, the address, how many people, were the men armed? Elena gave the street, the number on the door, her voice cracking on every word. No, she didn't think they had weapons. Yes, the men were inside. Yes, they were looking right now. Okay, stay on the line with me. Officers are on the way. Keep your voice down and stay exactly where you are. And here's where Nora did something Elena never expected. She leaned in, lips near the phone, and added her own piece. Soft. Clear. Tell them it's the men from the airport. Tell them about the bag, the money in the pink suitcase. They came for the money. Because Nora had figured it out. All of it. The swapped bags, the men at the door, the reason any of this was happening. And she wanted the police walking in already knowing exactly what they were dealing with. The dispatcher's voice shifted a little. Wrote it down. Passed it up the line. And out in the hallway, a door banged open. Then another. Closer. The men were going room to room. And the closet was the last door at the end of the hall. 3 streets over, a patrol car was already moving. The call had come in flagged urgent. 2 men inside a home, a child present, a woman whispering an address. In a dispatch room, that whisper changes everything. 2 men in a stranger's house is one thing. A child in there with them? That's a drop everything. Lights on, foot to the floor call. 2 officers, one driving, the other already on the radio, calling for backup, repeating the address. Then the dispatcher passed the last detail. The men from the airport, the money, a pink suitcase stuffed with cash. And one of the officers went still. Because he knew that detail. There'd been a case. A flagged report, weeks of dead ends. Cash that vanished in transit, the loose thread they couldn't pull. And now it turned up here. A family home in the suburbs, of all places, with a 10-year-old girl sitting right on top of it. Step on it. The car picked up speed, sliding through quiet streets, past dark houses and warm-lit windows. Every second counting, because back at that house, nobody knew how much time the woman and the girl had left, only that it was running out. Inside, the men were closing in on the last door in the hall, and the two people behind it held their breath, waiting, praying the next sound would be sirens. Not the closet door opening. The police were coming. But Nora wasn't done, because there were still two people who had no idea any of this was happening. The two who mattered most. Her mom, her dad. They'd left in such a hurry, both of them. Pulled out the door by emergencies, no idea that the second they walked out, everything fell apart behind them. And Nora needed them to know. That's what the watch was for. She'd grabbed it for exactly this. She pulled her sleeve back, the little screen glowing against her face. And she did the one thing a scared kid in a closet could still do. She found her dad's name, and she sent her location. One tap, and the watch quietly fired off a little map pin, her exact spot, straight to his phone. Then a message, typed with shaking thumbs, small and quiet, and somehow braver than anything a grown-up could have written. Dad. Men in the house. Me and Elena hiding. Called police. Come home. She stared at it for a second, then hit send. And that was it. That was everything she could do. The traps were set. The police were on the way. Her parents had her location. A 10-year-old in the dark, behind a row of coats, had done every single thing right. Calmer than a grown woman, faster than two grown men. Now all she could do was wait. Hold Elena's hand. Stay quiet. And hope the right people got there first. Out in the hall, the footsteps stopped. Right at the door. And the handle slowly began to turn. The meeting ended. Handshakes, nods, chairs scraping back. Michael reached for his phone, half in work mode still, half smiling. And the screen stopped him cold. Missed calls, 4 of them, all Nora. And under those, something he'd never seen in his life. A location pin from her smartwatch. One word attached to it that turned his blood to ice. Emergency. He opened it, the little map. His own house, flagged. Then her message, typed with shaking thumbs. Dad. Men in the house. Me and Elena hiding. Called police. Come home. For a second, Michael just stood there. The room emptied around him, all the noise of the office sliding far away and small. Men in the house. His little girl. Hiding. He read it again. And again. Like the words might rearrange into something that wasn't this. They didn't. Michael, you good? Someone asked. He didn't answer. He was already moving, across the room, through the door, leaving the laptop, the notes, his coat, all of it. Phone to his ear, calling her, his whole chest one solid knot. Pick up, please, baby, pick up. The most powerful feeling in the world isn't money, isn't status or a deal closed. It's a parent who's just realized their child is in danger and they're nowhere near. Michael hit the elevator button 6 times and prayed. Turn. He called her from the hallway, half running for the elevator. It rang once, twice, and then barely a sound. A whisper so faint he had to press the phone into his ear to catch it. Dad? Michael's knees almost buckled. He stopped walking. Nora, I'm here. I've got you. Are you okay? Are you hurt? No, she breathed. We're hiding, behind my bed. Me and Elena. Her voice was so small, so careful, holding itself together with everything she had. I called the police, Dad. They're coming. And that nearly undid him right there in the hallway. His little girl in the dark, 2 men in the house, and she'd kept her head clear enough to call for help. "I know you did, baby. You did everything right. You hear me? Everything right." He made himself slow down, make his voice steady because she needed steady right now. "Now listen. Stay exactly where you are. Don't come out. Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear downstairs. The police are almost there, and I'm coming too. I'm already on my way." A tiny pause on the other end, then smaller than ever. "Okay, hurry, Dad." 2 words. "Hurry, Dad." He'd hear them in his head for the rest of his life. "I will. I love you. Stay quiet. I'm not hanging up unless you need me to." He hit the elevator, the garage, his car. Phone still pressed to his ear, his daughter breathing softly on the other end. Somewhere across the city in the dark, close and so impossibly far. While he ran for the car, Michael called Lisa. And this time, between patience, just for a moment near her phone, she picked up. He didn't waste a single word. "Lisa, the house, now." Men got inside. Nora and Elena are hiding upstairs. Police are on the way. Go. For half a second, silence. He could picture her face, the catch in her breath, something clattering onto a counter. And then, no questions. No, are you sure? No, what do you mean? Just a doctor's mind, trained to stay calm in the worst moments, locking instantly onto the only thing in the world that mattered. "I'm leaving right now," she said. And she was already moving. Out of the room, down the corridor, white coat flying, calling over her shoulder for someone to cover her patient, hitting the doors at a near run. The composed doctor everyone leaned on was just a terrified mother now, fumbling her keys, heart slamming against her ribs. 2 cars, 2 sides of the city, both flooring it through the evening toward the same front door. Michael, weaving lane to lane, phone still open to Nora's quiet breathing. Lisa, running lights she'd never normally run, whispering the same 3 words over and over like a prayer. "Please be okay. Please be okay." Neither of them knew yet about the sirens already closing in on their street. Neither knew if they'd make it in time. They only knew the one thing every parent knows in their bones. There's no force on earth that keeps you from your child when they need you. And they drove like it. Inside, the men heard it first. Faint, then not faint at all. Sirens. Rising fast, getting closer, until blue and red light started flashing through the curtains and washing across the walls. Dean swore. Victor's calm finally cracked. "They called someone. Grab the bag. We're done. Grab it and go." They'd torn the house apart looking for the money and finally found it. The pink suitcase, right where Nora had left it. Dean snatched it up. The 2 of them ran for the front door, threw it open, and stopped dead. Because the street wasn't quiet anymore. Patrol cars were skidding up onto the lawn, doors flying open, headlights and flashing bars lighting the whole front of the house like daylight. Officers out, moving fast, voices sharp and loud. "Police, stop right there. Hands where we can see them." For one frozen second, Victor and Dean stood on that porch, the pink suitcase in Dean's hand, the fortune they'd chased across a whole city, and nowhere left to run. Up in the dark bedroom, behind the bed, Nora and Elena heard all of it. The sirens, the shouting. And Nora lifted her head, just a little, eyes wide, not with fear this time, with something closer to disbelief. It worked. They came. It actually worked. It was over in minutes. The 2 men who'd circled a quiet house all evening, tested its windows, forced their way in, were down on the driveway now, wrists cuffed behind their backs, saying nothing. The pink suitcase sat on the grass beside them, zipped shut, every bundle still inside. And as the officers searched the men and read them their rights, something became clear. This was bigger than one bag. One of the officers knew the names, knew the operation. Victor and Dean Kane hadn't just stumbled into a suitcase mix-up. They were part of something the police had been chasing a long time. Money moving through the city, quiet and dirty, always one step out of reach. Until tonight. Until a 10-year-old girl carried the wrong pink bag off a plane, opened it, and was smart enough and brave enough and calm enough to do every single thing right. The officers would say it later, more than once. Most grown adults panic in a moment like that. They freeze. They make noise. They make mistakes. This child set traps, hid her caregiver, called for help, and sent her own location, all without making a sound. A case they'd worked for months, cracked in one evening, by a kid in a red hoodie, behind a bed, in the dark. They got there minutes apart. Michael first, then Lisa, both leaving their cars half-parked in the driveway, pushing past the officers, calling her name. Nora! Nora! And then she was there, flying down the stairs into them, and the three of them just folded into each other on the entryway floor. Michael held them both. Lisa couldn't even speak. She just pressed her face into Nora's hair, shaking, her eyes red and raw from crying the whole way there. "I'm okay," Nora kept saying, small and certain. "Mom, I'm okay. Elena's okay. We're okay." Behind them, Elena stood with a hand over her chest, finally letting her own tears come. The house had been the scariest place in the world an hour ago. Now it was just home again, full of the only thing that ever really mattered. One of the officers crouched down and met her gaze. "Tonight," he said, "you did something most adults couldn't do. You stayed calm. You kept your cool. You protected the person with you and called for help in time. That didn't happen by chance. You are an extraordinary child." Nora simply nodded. Now that the danger had passed, she had grown a bit shy. They took the pink suitcase filled with money, each stack photographed and tagged. It was evidence from a case they had been working on for a very long time. And in its place, they brought the other one. The right one. The one that belonged to her. She unzipped it. And there they were. Later, when the cars were gone and the street was quiet again, they all sat together in the living room. Michael's arm around Lisa, Lisa's hand never leaving Nora's. Elena tucked a blanket around all of them, the way she always did. Nobody said much. They didn't need to. Here's the thing about Nora. She was 10 years old. She couldn't drive, couldn't vote, couldn't reach the top shelf without a chair. But when everything went wrong, when the grown-ups were too far away and fear filled the whole house, she didn't fall apart. She thought, she acted, she kept someone else safe. Courage isn't about being big or strong or fearless. Sometimes it's just a kid in a red hoodie in the dark, deciding to be brave anyway. And that changes everything.